You're listening to the Dueling Pistols podcast, where we read and discuss the stories of our past and explore some of the most wild adventures from modern history.
No, bro. George Washington said, stay strapped or get clapped, and I'm all about that. I ain't,
Floyd had split his surveying party into 3 groups.
Bro, you never split up. Never split up. You seen Scooby-Doo? Nothing good happens when the group splits.
As they tried to drag the canoe to the shore, Fanny Calloway beat him over the head with the paddle until it broke.
Good job, Fanny.
When the man in front goes down, pick up his rifle and shoot.
I hate this guy.
Yeah?
I hate this guy. I want him dead. I want him to die, and die a somewhat miserable death.
We ain't like the British.
We dissed everything, including the accent.
One of the Shawnees killed that day was the son of the man who would become Boone's captor and adoptive father.
Wow. Bro, this is like a freaking soap opera. That is ridiculous. Does he have an evil twin that's going to pop out sometime too?
Triggered by Black Flag.
All right, welcome back to the show. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined today by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
Right on. So today we're getting right back into the book. We're getting pretty deep into the book, Boone, a biography by Robert Morgan, and we are now at the point where Daniel Boone and his party of intrepid explorers moving through the Appalachian Mountains through that little gap called the Cumberland Gap, which yesterday we read was like a slot of a gun sight. But as you looked it up, it was hard to find that slot, like a gun sight through the mountains. It's more like a maze, I guess.
That's what it looks like to me.
But anyway, the point is that they are making their way. And to catch people up, I'm going to do a quick little summary and borrow a little background info from the intranet. So here we have a little, I'm just going to lay a quick summary to catch us all up, keep all our ducks in a row so we can keep following the story. So we got this gentleman. We're going to kind of follow his story. Will be like a scaffolding for what we're going to cover today and so on. So you got John Finley. Okay, he's one of the explorers, let's say, traveling with Boone to find a way through the Cumberland Gap, which basically right now you have all these settlements of settlers and the British Empire move their way in, the French and all this kind of stuff. Pretty much all of this stuff is happening east of the Appalachian Mountain Range or south down into Florida. Okay. And that's where primarily the European civilizations are right now, the settlers, the colonialists, right? And on the west side of the Appalachian Mountains, you got Kentucky and the rest of the United States, which is largely untouched at this point in time. So John Finley is a friend of Daniel Boone. He was born in Northern Ireland, and Finley immigrated with his family to Pennsylvania in his early 20s. And then in 1744, he was granted a license to trade with Indians on the upper Ohio River. And in the following years, he ranged throughout present-day eastern Kentucky and southern Ohio. Okay. So he's, again, hanging out all east of, at first in Pennsylvania area in Ohio. It says in 1752, so probably, what is that? Not quite 10 years. After coming to America, Finley was taken captive by Shawnee Indians near the falls of the Ohio. Can you imagine the culture shock from Ireland to captured by Indians in America? Like, talk about exotic
Not
living.
just that, but I assume he's of Quakerish stock, hung out with a bunch of those people.
I don't know. He's Irish, so...
Did he bring along some fire whiskey with him?
He's probably an alcoholic. No offense, but let's just keep it real.
Have you seen the chart where they show Ireland and like they were coming up with all these inventions and blah blah blah, then they invent whiskey and then it just stops. Like all inventions and it like for like hundreds of years, then just boom,
No, I haven't
dead.
seen it.
It's
I'll tell you,
hilarious.
the Irish are some of the wittiest, funniest, dark-minded human beings on the planet Earth. And they can be dour at times, but real. They're very, they're just the greatest. And so anyway, it says he was taken to the Indian villages in the Kentucky lowlands, where he was one of the first non-Indians to see the fertile forests and prairies that later became known as the Bluegrass Country. Finley soon learned from other traders that the region was readily accessible from north. So he found the Cumberland Gap, or he thought he knew of where the Cumberland Gap was through his journeys. Within a short time, the Shawnee released Finley, and he made his way back to the settlements on the Pennsylvania frontier. So they captured him, kept him for a while, went places with him. He figured out from them kind of where he was at, got a lay of the land. Although there was a growing demand for new lands to settle, his reports of the bluegrass country were not followed up due to the outbreak of the French and Indian War in 1754.
Gotcha.
So, he got back around 1753, 1752 when he was captured shortly after that. So within a year to 2 years of being back, he had the French and Indian War. And that is where he met Daniel Boone. So Daniel Boone got sucked into it as well. And remember General Braddock, Edward Braddock? Because Finley served as a wagon driver, and so did
Boone.
They were both teamsters. So they were wagon drivers, and Boone was also a blacksmith. I mean, Boone can make guns, work with metal, and all that kind of stuff. He's pretty skilled at
if I can make my own knife, I don't mind if the Indians rip me off that badly. It's like, I'll
Perhaps,
make another
I guess.
one,
But it says that in that conflict, Finley served as the wagon driver like Boone. And Edward Braddock, remember how he went in there all cocky because he was going to get the French.
The English general?
Yeah, because he was going to get the French, kick their butts. And
like they normally do.
Yeah, and he said he was going to just roll in, and he didn't need to worry about the Indians, too, because they were savages. And then they got routed by the Indians, and Boone took off running.
He showed up, and there was trees in America. They didn't know how to fight amongst them. Like,
right.
Bro,
they got their butts kicked. They escaped.
Is there anything more satisfying than watching a movie of historical events and watching the pompous British guy get kicked in the butt? There's nothing more satisfying.
It's true. It's too true.
Oh, it's my favorite trope.
And I like the Brits,
I got family that are British people,
but
and I love them.
At the same time, you're just like, but a cocky, arrogant, elitist Brit, you just love to see him get
anyone in a
down
red coat,
by the anyone pretentious, I suppose. But it says in general, so they run away and they escape. So in that campaign, that's when Finley befriended Daniel Boone and they became friends. Okay. After the war ended in 1763, basically 13 years later or something like that, Finley meets up with Boone. It says that Boone and Finley in 1769, which is exactly the point we're at in the book now, 1768, the fall of 1768, which quickly turned into the winter of 69, that is when they're going through the Cumberland Gap, and now they're into Kentucky. Okay? So 1769, that's where we're at in the book to catch you all up. So those are some dates. The French and Indian Wars kind of subsided. Right now, you got the settlers. Now they're getting ready to go explore the West, basically. And basically, Boone and Finley just hung out a lot in 68 and 69. And they're like, dude, like, this reminds me of me hanging out with Anthony or Lampers. We get together for too long and we're planning some trip to the middle of nowhere to explore some new place and some hunt we're going to do that we've never done before. From Canada to Alaska to New Zealand to Mexico to wherever to the United States to different wildernesses. It's like, oh, hey, have you ever been here? And you just start talking. And within a year and a half of planning, you're like, we got to do this. And you got the horses ready. You got the pack animals loaded. You got the tools, the equipment, all that stuff. And boom, they're taking off. So 1769, they are on their way through the gap. Okay.
So a little side note. I was wondering, like, estimated numbers, if they had any out there, about how many pioneers at this point, pilgrims, I don't want you to call them, were kidnapped at this point. Or, I just want a rough estimate. And Google's a scary place, Brian. It was just a list of atrocities. But it listed the top 10 worst Native Americans and stuff to be captured by, which I think is an awesome list that someone put together.
Yes.
But it looks like the Shawnee, they're fierce warriors. You don't cross them. But, as far as being captured by them, torture was not their go-to.
No, the Comanche were scary.
The Comanche, bro, hot coals and I was like, whoa, bro.
No thanks. Like, don't get caught by the Comanche.
No,
there's a few others. Look, I read a book which we should dive into on this podcast in some future date, and it was like Kidnapped or something, and it's just all the documented Indian kidnappings of white people.
I thought that was Liam Neeson's book. No, it's taken. My bad.
But the book is what's fascinating, all these things are so nuanced. They do kidnap the settlers, and then they brutally murder some, torture some, and so forth, and others they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that they don't, for whatever reason, like they had to show some savagery or toughness or character, and then often the Indians didn't kill them, or they're just as lucky circumstances combined with that. And what ends up happening often is those people, once they go, how the term,
they go native.
Gone native.
Bro.
It's like some 9 out of 10 who adopted the Native American lifestyle never wanted to go back to civilization.
You remember Brother Eschweiler?
Mm-hmm.
So he has aunts and uncles, like 6 of them were kidnapped, gone for 8 years. The 2 of them were like under 5 years old. Mm-hmm. Anyone that was prepubescent, like half of them decided to stay after 8 years.
Kidnapped by
Indians. I couldn't tell you what tribe it was, but he has aunts and uncles that he never ended up meeting because they were kidnapped by Indians.
Yeah.
That's not that far away, bro. I know that guy.
I know. No, it's really interesting to read about it and to see, but that's a tangent.
Well, they're also Filipino, by the way, so they kind of blend in better. So,
but what we have here is a situation where we are now at the point where they have gone through Warrior's Trace, which we talked about yesterday. It's like a Warrior's Trail of the Cherokee Indians. And they followed that trail, and they went through the Cumberland Gap, and they crossed the Cumberland River, and they have arrived in the rich country that Finley had been in 18 years before when he got captured by the Shawnee. Okay. That catches us all up. Remember, we were talking about Mount Pisgah, and he's in the comparison of Boone standing on Pilot Knob, comparing that to Moses standing at the tip of Mount Pisgah, looking out over the land of Canaan.
I ended up looking up what Pisgah means, and it's Hebrew, and it literally means top of the mountain or summit. I love they call it Mount Summit.
Yeah, so getting into the book, we'll get right back into it here. So Finley is on this expedition along with John Stewart, which is Daniel Boone's brother-in-law. While Stewart and the others continued to build shelters at Station Camp, Boone and Finley began to explore the country to the north. Poor guys.
Farming and building to be done, and Boone, I'm going to go camping, guys.
Yeah. So Boone and Finley, they take off, right? They're going to go and try to see what's around, scout, make sure they're not getting ambushed by Indians, the whole thing. They followed the warrior's path to Finley's old camp on the stream that would be named Lulbegrud Creek.
That's a bad name.
Lulbegrud? It's a tributary
Irish
of the Red River, and found the remains of his stay there. So his old camp is still there, Finley's old camp.
Cool.
So now they're still trotting on familiar ground a little bit, because Finley's been there. On the 7th day of June following, we found ourselves on Red River, where John Finley had formerly been trading with the Indians, and from the top of an eminence saw with pleasure the beautiful level of Kentucky. It was the site of Finley's former camp that proved conclusively that Boone and his party had reached Kentucky. Boone and Finley had found the site that the Shawnees had called Blue Lick Town, but the Shawnees were gone and their huts buried and their huts burned. Much of Boone's history and Kentucky's would be connected to a place farther north on the Licking River called the Lower Blue Licks. The licks were, I believe, mineral deposits.
That would make sense, yeah.
I think. We'll get there when we get there. There was another blue that caught the explorers' attention, the grass that covered so much of the meadowlands of the region called ever after the bluegrass. Bluegrass would come to be understood as music, no, just kidding, as almost synonymous with central Kentucky and Kentucky culture. There has been a good deal of discussion about what is actually meant by the term bluegrass. Some have suggested the bluegrass is of European origin, brought by early traders in the hay they packed their trade goods in. Scattered in their camps, the seeds swept over Kentucky, filling an ecological gap, and became a prominent feature of the region. Most botanists agree that bluegrass is Poa pratensis, which seems to have originated in Pennsylvania though it could have been brought there from Europe in the 17th century. Some say bluegrass came from England, where it was called smooth meadow grass. What seems certain is that the grasslands of Kentucky were covered with this and similar grasses by the time Boone and Finley were gazing on the rolling hills and gentle valleys in 1769. Though we have no proof, it seems likely that such extensive growth had taken much longer than 17 years, perhaps centuries, to spread so thoroughly. The region's limestone soil on which the grass thrives lies on the formation geologists call the Cincinnati Arch, said to be the oldest soil in North America.
How's it the oldest soil?
It's the soil above ground.
Oh, gotcha. That makes more sense.
At some point.
This bluegrass ain't very blue.
I think from a distance up on a mountain, it's probably super blue, but close up it just is green. But I bet you, when you look at bluegrass from a distance, it's not green. It's just not. According to the historian George W. Rank, the term bluegrass is an abbreviation of blue limestone grass. Sounds like there's a few different people with different opinions on this, but
I could not get a definitive answer on this. I tried to look it up because some people said that it came from Asia and Europe, like we said. But some people said that they think that it might have already been here, just not as widely spread.
Whatever its origins, the sweeping savannas of lush, shining grass were a sight to behold. It is a wonderful paradox of our language that bluegrass music refers to music of the mountains in the backcountry, where the bluegrass region is the aristocratic racehorse breeding area of central Kentucky.
Really? Interesting.
Some historians have suggested that fires set by Shawnees and Iroquois in hunting to drive game were the source of the open meadows and savannas of the bluegrass region. Certainly, the Iroquois had cleared the region in more senses than one. A later historian and archaeologist, Nancy O'Malley, would describe the region. The realized niche of the inner bluegrass was an uncommonly rich one, being well wooded but with occasional openings that were amenable to clearing. Its soils were generally rich and deep, and its rolling topography was more erosion resistant than many other areas. Other environmental realities included a sometimes uncertain surface flowing water supply, ameliorated by the presence of numerous permanent springs. Recently, ecologists studying the records have decided that the central region of Kentucky had more forests than it did meadows, though some of the more fertile areas had curiously open woodland or savanna with large cane brakes on uplands and stretches of grassland that might be called prairie. The botanist Short in 1828 said that large sections of central Kentucky were covered with orchards of pawpaws. What's a pawpaw?
Is it P-A-W?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. It's a berry bush. Ew, I ain't eating that.
It's interesting. We'll get, because you got
this is an American
soil.
fruit. How have we never heard of this?
I mean, I've heard the pawpaw.
Yeah, but I've never seen it before.
We might as well live in a different world when you compare the West to the East.
Yeah.
There has been little disagreement about the fertility of the ground in this section of Kentucky. Every early traveler noted the richness of the limestone soil. Some said there was no leaves under the trees because the ground was so rich the fallen leaves rotted before winter was over.
Cane brakes are basically gone.
No.
Those plants, we used to have these bamboo-like plants all over North America.
Yep.
It looks like they burned them for cattle purposes and just wiped it out.
It's interesting because the cane brakes are basically a central picture. What the book sort of describes it as is almost like a cornfield, right? Like once you jump into the cane brake, like good luck finding a dude in there. Mm-hmm. It's like
it's a bamboo foot-looking forest, dude. Like
it's flat and goes on forever and is thick. So that's where a lot of people would go. And like Boone escapes into the cane brakes constantly from Indians. He also camps in the middle of those things, so you can't find him. I mean, you just walk into a dense
like
cane
jumping
brake, into a thicket, and then you just walk in the middle of it 300 yards, and you just clear out a little circle, and you have a private little camp right there that no one's ever going to find unless they walk right on.
That's a wall.
Holy
That's
moly,
a wall.
that's a cane brake?
So cane brakes get up to 24 feet tall, it says.
That is a Wow.
Yeah, that is a wall, bro. That is a legit wall. Like, how do you get through that?
Yeah, you're just going to chop a little trail maybe, but you can see how if you jump in there, it's like good luck catching a guy.
Yeah, for those that are listening, if you hop on YouTube, I throw pictures up all the time. So
yeah, you can watch the video version of this
ridiculous.
podcast, and Brent will throw up some photos and stuff onto the video. So yeah, that's wild, dude. He's on a horse. For those that are listening, dude is on a horse in front of a cane brake, on horseback. It's black and white, and that horse has got to be
a fifth. I mean, him on top of the horse,
above his head. He's probably 8 feet off the ground or something right there. And that cane brake is like
4 times taller, 5 times taller than him.
It's got to be at least 20 feet tall and dense.
Try running through that. How do you not
yeah.
You know what that makes me think of? American Ninja Warrior.
That's not, they don't have that anymore?
They do. They're just not as widespread. I had a map and it was basically like, anywhere you would think is like the northern southish area in Kentucky, like all those major states all around it and stuff. It used to be all over there. Now it's just in pockets because it used to take over huge fields.
Yeah.
They wanted them for the cattle.
Doesn't surprise me we got rid of it because it's not very useful outside of. You got to wonder what the ecology was there, though. You know, there had to be animals for millions of years adapted to
living in those things.
Live in that and for it to be a thing.
Think how many birds.
When you get rid of that completely, it's like things adapted for that type of ecology. How did they fare? Anyway, yeah. So there you go. That's what a cane brake is. It says in the book, they kind of thought that the soil in Kentucky, some people said, was too rich for growing anything but hemp, flax, and corn. Why?
Too rich? You mean like
hot?
Oh,
too much nutrition. You know, too intense. So only certain plants. We need lampers on here, you know, and some gardener. I can't speak to it, but
corn is a monster of a plant.
It's limestone based soil, rich and dark. Anyway, back to the book. In June, so they left in the fall. So you're getting into the summer. Boone and his companions began an idyll in the wilderness. IDYLL? Idyll? What does that mean exactly? Idyll. Just like a hangout? It says game was so plentiful that the buffalo and elk, deer, and turkeys practically just found themselves in front of a rifle sight.
Idyll is an extremely happy, peaceful, or picturesque episode of a scene. Typically an idealized or an unsustainable one.
Yeah, I thought it was they began an idyllic, you know.
But it's picturesque. It's something idyll, they know it's not going to be around forever.
They began an idyll in the wilderness. An idyll, it's interesting. Never heard that.
I've never heard it used like that.
That root of the word used that way. Game was so plentiful that the buffalo, elk, deer, and turkeys just found themselves in front of rifle sights. They didn't have to hunt them. Boone and Stewart and Finley hunted while the others stayed in camp and prepared the hides. To be worth a buckskin had to be shaved and the rough outer skin scraped away. According to Draper, the skin was thoroughly rubbed across a staking board until rendered quite soft and pliant, thus stripping it of all unnecessary weight and fitting it for packing more compactly. Boone also took the opportunity to go farther afield in his explorations. It was during the summer and fall that Boone began to learn Kentucky. It is likely no other white man ever knew the whole of the pristine Great Meadow so intimately and completely. At this time, he ranged as far west as the falls of the Ohio, where Fort Nelson and then Louisville would later be built. He hunted north of the Blue Licks to the Ohio and followed the river with the French explorer La Salle, and he called La Belle. Okay, he followed some rivers and he explored this valley.
Good for him.
It says he found dozens of salt springs and licks and the oil springs. He found 1,000 bold springs where water issued blinking into the light from under the roots of tulip poplar or dogwood. This is like hunting ground, like the Garden of Eden of all hunting grounds. Just ripe with animal life and the country just rich and thriving. Boone found the mouths of caves in the limestone where cool air breathed out in summer and cooler air was pulled inside in winter.
Nice. It's like nature provides.
He saw ebbing and flowing springs that gushed and then slowed to a trickle at the catchment inside the rock filled and then was siphoned empty again. He was on a mission, wrote Gilmore Simms. The spiritual sense was strong in him. He felt the union between his inner self and the nature of the visible world and yearned for their intimate communion. His thoughts and feelings were those of a great discoverer. The first exploration of Kentucky caused writers of the 19th century such as C.W. Weber to dip their pens into purple ink. Here, the mother that had worshipped had put on her beautiful garments at last and revealed herself to him as God had caused her to be. Here he would realize the joy of worship, the soft terror of an overcoming awe, and transported cry aloud in wonder. These early writers, dude, even James Fenimore Cooper, if you read The Last of the Mohicans, it's a slog.
Really?
It's so flowery and Victorian and stuff that just say he had a gun and he went out, you know? But it's pretty much all the flowery ways you could say the same thing with a lot more words. I'm not going to read the Victorian age writing here, but it says, even in the Victorian age, the gender and sexual overtones of Boone's passion for Kentucky were implicitly understood. A lot of the writing has that sort of undertone, I guess. As far as we know, Boone did not have a compass with him. He depended on the sun by day and the stars at night to keep his orientation. And, of course, he could look at moss on the north side of trees, except in deep woods and hollows where moss grew on all sides of the trunks. Navigation in the wilderness, especially when exploring, is less a matter of quadrant directions than of following land features such as mountain ranges and river system. Yeah, we talked about that. You know, when you're in the forests of the Oregon coast, it's a lot different sort of navigation techniques than when you're in the mountains of Colorado at 10,000 feet or 12,000 feet. Knowing where the watershed of the Rockcastle River ended and that of the Kentucky River began was more important than knowing true north or the degree of latitude. In a deep forest where it was hard to even see the sky, it would be difficult to know which direction to pursue to reach a gap or river gorge. There, the best method of finding your way was to choose the tallest tree in sight and climb it. A hunter, careful not to leave his rifle on the ground, laid it on limbs out of reach of the ground. Once in the top, he could part the limbs and look far out over the tops of the other trees to a river sparkling in the distance or a peak he recognized rearing to the left.
So they'd take their guns into the trees to
climb, and then they'd leave the rifle about halfway up the tree or up in the tree where some Indian couldn't come along, pick it up, and shoot you with it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I suppose if some grizz or something else came waltzing up, you know, you had your gun with you. It wasn't on the ground 20 feet away.
I don't want to run to a grizzly now with a really big gun, let alone a musket or something. That's terrifying.
It says, though honeybees had not reached the Kentucky wilderness in 1769. Did you know that?
No.
That's something to think about. What's the origin of honeybees? Because they pollinate all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. It says, though honeybees had not reached the Kentucky wilderness in 1769, the most common milk in the region was what, Brent?
Milk?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming it's not going to be cattle and it's not going to be goats. I have no... Buffalo?
Yes.
So they would kill a buffalo and get some milk?
The most common milk in the region was buffalo milk. The place was, in a metaphorical sense, a land flowing with milk and honey.
They ain't milking no buffalo.
The buffalo fed on clover and wild pea vines and shoots of young cane, and bears fed on grubs and acorns and a dozen kinds of berries. Fox grapes ripened on the creek banks after the first frost. Though Boone and his companions were primarily collecting deer hides, they also killed elk and buffalo from time to time.
So buckskins are better than elk skins?
Yes.
Weren't elk skins usually used for teepees?
No, buffalo. here I'll finish reading it. They were mostly collecting deer hides, but they also killed elk and a buffalo from time to time. Elk hides were cut up to use as harness and straps, for horses and for more like a rope, right?
Did you think they have that vastly different skin, or?
Oh yeah, and bear and buffalo skins were used for bedding, so they kept the fur on.
Yeah, bro, sleeping on this thing, dude,
Yeah.
melt.
Yeah, but elk, the fur's not that good, but the hide is thick enough that you can use it for reins and for leather straps.
I gotcha. So it's
harnesses.
a thicker leather, probably more closer to thick like a cow would be.
Yeah, it was an extended frolic every day, presenting new vistas, a wonderful summer that stretched into fall, and a wonderful Indian summer. Among the wonders was the fact that it was an Indian summer in which they saw no Indians, although called that because it was the season when Indians were most likely to be on the warpath.
That's funny.
For convenience and safety, Boone and his party had made several smaller camps in a large semicircle around their base at Station Camp. That way, the hides and furs were cached at different locations. If Indians attacked one camp and took the furs, they might miss the others, and the men could slip away into the forest. However, the bulk of their equipment and supplies, as well as hides and furs, was kept at the Station Camp, hub of their operations. On December 22nd, a bright, beautiful day, Boone and Stewart were roaming the woods with their rifles, so they'd been there a year, little over a year, relishing the bounty around them when a party of Shawnees appeared. They came out of a canebrake and took the hunters prisoner.
Those
Ambushed.
cane breaks, man. Two-edged sword.
In Filson's account of 1784, Boone says, "In the decline of the day, near Kentucky River, as we ascended the brow of a small hill, a number of Indians rushed out of a thick canebrake upon us and made us prisoners. The time of our sorrow was now arrived, and the scene fully opened. The Indians plundered us of what we had. Surprised and outnumbered, Boone and Stewart had no choice but to surrender. The Shawnees, returning from a hunt on the Green River to their villages north of the Ohio, probably as surprised by the encounter as Boone and Stewart, ordered the hunters to show them their camp. Boone tended to display a remarkably cool head in emergencies. As the Shawnees threatened him with their tomahawks, he cheerfully agreed to show them one of the outlying camps. As they approached the camp, Boone took care to make enough noise so that his companions working there would be warned. The men who were in the camp got the warning and slipped away unnoticed by the Shawnees.
Good man.
Boone calculated that the men who had fled would warn the others and that they would quickly hide the accumulated pelts and hides and the valuable supplies at the base camp in the woods. To give them time, he led the Shawnees to each of the outlying camps one by one. All guns and powder and lead, traps and precious salt were confiscated along the way. When he finally had no choice but to lead his captors to the main camp, Boone was astonished to find that the other men had simply fled into the woods, leaving the great hoard of furs and hides, supplies and horses in plain sight. His stalling for time had been wasted.
I'd be mad.
Well, you don't really know what these Indians are going to do or how many there are, live to fight another day. I mean, Boone obviously kept his cool, but it says the Shawnees, led by a chief who called himself Captain Will Emery. Indian chiefs often took English names and the title of captain. Loaded a fortune in hides and furs on the hunters' own pack horses. Shawnees had only a few horses then. Captain Will apparently had no interest in harming Boone and Stewart. The Shawnees took all they had and gave them in return a small supply of powder and lead and a cheap musket. One of those Indian trades. Mm-hmm. But Captain Will warned Boone before he left to go home and not to return to Kentucky. For this is Indians' hunting ground, and all the animals, skins, and furs are ours. And if you are so foolish as to venture here again, you may be sure the wasps and yellow jackets will sting you severely.
Sting you severely.
Captain Will probably thought he was being correct, even generous, to the trespassers and poachers from North Carolina. By his code, he was treating Boone and Stewart with respect. Boone took it all with apparent good cheer and shook hands with his captors. By the time Boone and Stewart encountered Will Emery and his band of Shawnees that December day in 1769, the Shawnees were a scattered people, living in small contingents and mingling with other Indian groups in Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Pennsylvania. Stephen Aaron tells us, as many as 200 had lived in the village of Esquipakathiki. In 1736. But that village had been abandoned by 1769, about 40 years later. Many Shawnees lived in what would become Ohio on the Scioto and Little Miami rivers.
Little Miami.
War, disease, internal conflicts, displacement, all these things had already diminished the Shawnee population by the time they returned to their old homeland in Ohio. They spoke, there's such a mixture that in these villages with the Shawnee, they actually spoke 3 different languages. Yeah, kind of
makes me feel dumb. I feel like I've tried to learn some languages.
I learned Japanese. I was there for 2 years.
That helps. I feel like if I moved to a country, I'd be able to learn the language better.
For sure. But becoming bilingual is just work. You got to practice it, study it, use it, live in it. A year, 2 years. I mean, I mastered the language pretty well, the speaking portion of Japanese, within a year and a half. The last 6 months of that period was, I would dream in that language, think in that language, was pretty submersed in it. I rarely spoke English. When I came home, the grammar in a lot of languages is very different from the grammar in the English language. So depending on what you're speaking, in Japan, you say, store to I go. And in America, you say, I'm going to the store, right? It's totally backwards. And you sound stupid in Japan. If you say, I'm going to the store, you're supposed to say store to I go or store to go I, and so,
it just feels awful when you say, I'm trying to my brain doesn't like it.
It's different, but once you, everyone speaks in that way. That's how the grammar is set up. And once you learn to communicate that way, I would say the grammar was some of the hardest parts of learning Japanese, and probably for other languages are more akin to ours. And I think it's easier, but then you have gender languages, those love languages, like I suppose Spanish and French and stuff like that, where, they're depending on male or female, how you speak, you add to each word. And, every language has its thing and its challenges, but yeah, I think if you are raised where you hear both all the time and you have multiple people that speak it when you're little to when you're big, you just kind of pick it up, and, it's more natural.
I would find this very
I think
hard
Americans,
to learn.
I'll say United States folks are woefully not adept at more than one language, their own, whereas other nations, very common for people to speak multiple languages. It's not, we're just, pretty ethnocentric here. A little bit, but being a member of the LDS Church and being a missionary and seeing the numbers of, young men that go and serve a mission and preach, the Bible and stuff in foreign countries. It's amazing how quickly you can learn foreign language. Really can.
My question is, though, at this time, none of the Indians have a written language. It's all verbal at this point.
Well, who was it?
We talked about it in a previous podcast.
Was it the Iroquois or the Shawnee or somebody made an alphabet and actually made it into a phonetic written?
Yeah, he had to come up with how to write out the vowels.
The
and once they
syllabi
figured,
or
yeah, the
whatever.
syllabi, that's what it is. Not a syllabus, a syllabi. So it's a collection of all the syllables. Once they had that, they could actually write it out and stuff like that. So at this point, these guys are all learning this just by these guys talking and explaining them what these are. They have no notes to look over or remember. They just have to listen and get it.
Yeah. And think of it this way too. We have a heavy reliance on our devices. So memorization, I don't know if we have that skill as mastered as much as people in the past. I remember having a couple of professors in college and even junior high They had all 50 states memorized, the capitals.
I used to know like
presidents.
50 phone numbers.
I mean, it's just like they could memorize stuff like instantly. Like, yeah, phone numbers. When I was a kid, that's all we had. And I just knew everybody's phone number by heart. There wasn't,
Wasn't hard.
You just knew their number and you dialed it. That's for younger people of this generation. If they don't have a contact list and they click it, like memorizing 50 different phone numbers is unfathomable, but it just sort of happened. You just
no one
did
even
it.
thought it. You just did it.
You know, so
That's cool though. I bet that's how it was. They just did it and it just happened.
it's so different. Technology makes us more brilliant and less brilliant at the same time, you know. So anyway, it says that back to the book. It says that the Shawnees and other Indians were relatively tolerant of hunters of either race who were only killing for meat. Everyone had a right to eat, but hunters accumulating furs and deer hides to sell angered them. Indians had fought among themselves for over hunting rights so long, some had indeed come to call it the dark and bloody ground. The Reverend David McClure recorded an account of Indian hunters presenting their furs and meat to widows and the elderly. Hunters were honored for providing for their kin and for the aged who could no longer hunt themselves. Indian courtesy required that the first game killed on a hunt be presented to a hunting partner. Indians did not deplete the game at the rate white hunters did, not because they were less interested in demonstrating their mastery as hunters, but because of the ethic of killing only for need. Believing that it angered the spirits of animals to kill wantonly, Indian hunters restrained their killing, while white hunters were known to shoot large animals such as buffalo and elk for diversion or for target practice.
Ooh, that's rough.
It took several days for the Shawnees to loot and destroy all the group's hunting camps. And when they finally left for their towns north of the Ohio River, Finley and the others emerged from the forest. They were devastated by their losses and deeply shaken by the sudden appearance of and destruction wrought by the Shawnees. Finley, Mooney, Holder, and Cooley said they had had enough of Kentucky. They were going back to North Carolina.
Those guys got good last names.
But Boone was determined to retrieve some of the wealth that had been taken from them.
I'm going to get mine.
At the very least, they might steal back some of the horses. Otherwise, they would have to walk back to North Carolina.
See, that makes sense. I can get behind little horse thieving.
With horses, they could return to the Yadkin for necessary supplies.
So they can come right back? The guys know you're there, bro. Find a new spot.
Dude, this is the balls on this guy. It says Boone and Stewart, which was his brother-in-law, who he has claimed is like a stud, badass, most reliable, excellent with a gun, resourceful, like, you know, Stewart is just as badass, it sounds, as Boone is, right in the ballpark. Like, Boone had tremendous respect for his brother-in-law.
He was out there for a year with the dude. He can't be a slouch.
It says that Boone and Stewart started out after the Shawnees and caught up with them in a few days.
And what, Brian?
I mean, think about this. Like, you know, Captain Emery of
Which he's
the
got some
Indian
names.
chief, you know, just let you get away and said, don't ever come back, or the wasps, what with the wasps and hornets will sting you or something. Like, his warning was like, don't ever come back. We're not killing you now, but we will later. So don't ever come back. And by the way, we're taking everything you have, and this is our land and our stuff. Then he lets them go. And Boone's like, all right, let's go steal it back.
The thing is like, I have friends where that's what they would be like. And then I'd be like, bro, let's go. And they'd be like, but my stuff.
They shook hands.
Their stuff. It's their stuff now. They claimed it. It's theirs. Move on.
They shook hands with him and were like, hey, bro,
Little
thank
finger
you.
cross behind the back. Yeah, I've met those people too.
It's crazy. It says, so they got caught up with him within a few days. I mean, also the chutzpah. I mean, there's some guts here.
Chutzpah.
We'll see how this turns out. Okay. This gets into a really interesting part of the story. The next part's unbelievable. It gets wild. It says they watched the Indian camp until the small hours of the night and then crept to the clearing. Okay. Where the horses were hobbled. And, we're going to have to cover the rest of this on the next episode, which ought to be tomorrow. So, the next part is really cool. So we'll get into that on the next one. But this is the Daniel Boone. This is why he's kind of a legend. Mm-hmm. And every time I read this stuff, I think, well, first of all, the guts, the balls, the brazenness, but also the confidence and the willingness to risk your life. And there's some gamesmanship going on here between Boone and the Indians, as if they like...
They're woodsmen's. It's a woodsman's game.
It's like they like this competition. Mm-hmm. Oh, you stole from me? I'm going to steal from you. There's like this... Oh, these native people, they grow to love Boone. Yet this is the crap he pulls. You'd think they just kill him.
I've got some friends who are just... They push buttons constantly, but their charisma is so high. Yeah. And you just can't help it. Like I've got friends who are kind of dickish, but they're so charismatic. People just let them get away with things.
Well, people are, I mean, there is a degree of, sometimes it's manipulation, but sometimes it's just a genuine zest for life, I think. And people are drawn to that. So anyway, we'll get into the next part. I hope you guys are enjoying the series here. If you haven't bought the book, consider buying it to support the author, Robert Morgan. The book is called Boone, a Biography. And we're skipping through parts of it. We're reading some of it, of course, but other parts we're just leaving behind, kind of cherry picking some of the parts that are interesting. But hope you're enjoying it. Thanks for supporting us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channels. Leave comments. We love to engage there. We'll read your comments. We try to read every single comment on the video version of the podcast, and leave us a review on every podcast channels. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
All right, folks, I hope you're enjoying the Dueling Pistols podcast. If you like it, do us a favor and share it with a friend. Help us get this thing to grow a little bit bigger. Tell your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your buddy, your uncle.
Go to
your grandpa.
Hit select all, send.
Just sell it. Just share it with a friend of yours, somebody, and help us spread the word about the show. Thanks for supporting us. We'll catch you on the next episode.